Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be editing, if I can type, editing part 3. So this is when the sawhorse and the other characters meet. Okay, so it's when Dorothy meets the sawhorse in whichever way you wanted. So some of you have said that they hear the sawhorse make an unusual noise in the bushes. Some of you got Dorothy tripping over the sawhorse, or him jumping out to scare them, or Dorothy or Toto or the Scarecrow coming across him in the bushes or something like that. Okay, so all of them are a little bit different. So this one contains lots and lots of speech, and hopefully from our spag lesson this morning before this one, we have now figured out and remember and are able to use speech, punctuation and inverted commas in the correct way. So we know the rules of right align, misalign. We know about using punctuation before the reporting statement, and we can make sure we are using the right punctuation at all times. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is go back and read your plan. Okay, go back and see what you wanted to write about. And then I want you to read your draft. Have you got everything in your draft that you said you wanted to write about in your plan? Have you used your high-level vocabulary? Okay, so I am going to look at my draft now. So I think that most of this is okay, but I think that my punctuation and my speech rules need to be improved, okay? So let's read the draft through. What was that? She asked. I cannot imagine, replied the Scarecrow, but we can go and see. One of the big trees had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it was a horse, but no ordinary horse, instead a wooden horse. Did you just speak? Asked Dorothy. Yes, answered the sawhorse. I did. I've been here for over a year, and no one has ever heard me before, or come to help me. Okay, so that is my draft so far, or part of my draft so far. Okay, so I need to remember the key rules of speech. That's what I'm going to be thinking about first. So when you're doing your draft, you can be making a quick note of what you need to up-level or change for when you rewrite it for your edit, as well as your other editing skills. Okay, so here, what was that? She asked. So I can assume that I know that that's Dorothy talking. But then the Scarecrow starts to speak here. So actually, if I was following the rules of speech, I need a new line for a new speaker. So remember, new speaker, new line. So that makes it clearer now that it is another person talking. They're replying to Dorothy. Okay. Then I have got some speech down here. Did you just speak? Well, surely that is a question. Okay, so I don't need a comma, I need a question mark. Okay, because Dorothy is asking my question. It even tells me here, asked Dorothy. Okay, then I've got my new speaker, new line for the sawhorse, and the sawhorse replies, yes, I did. But if you can see what we remembered, what we learnt, in our spag lesson earlier, was that before we close our inverted commas, we need a piece of punctuation. We need an exclamation mark, a question mark, or a comma. Okay, so in this instance, I think I want to use an exclamation mark. So he's exclaiming, yes, answered the sawhorse, I did. Okay, so then I've got my reporting statement and I've got the comma to follow it before I write the new set of inverted commas. Okay. I did. I've been here for over a year and no one has ever heard me before or come to help me. So you will see here that I've got two sets of inverted commas. And hopefully you're saying, Miss Williams, that's not right. That shouldn't be like that. And you would be correct. That's because some of us make this mistake sometimes. We put inverted commas in the middle of a character's speech because we think it's maybe too long, or we think it's stopped and then they need to start again. But actually, we don't need those inverted commas there, okay? So we can get rid of them. They just go at the beginning of the piece of speech and at the end of the piece of speech, unless there is a reporting statement in the middle, okay? Unless you split it, okay? So now that I know that I have sorted out my speech punctuation and my inverted commas, I'm now going to have a look at what I can up-level, change, or any punctuation that needs adding or any spellings that need correcting. him. Okay, so what was that? She asked timidly. I think that I could up-level that and describe how Dorothy asked it, okay? Because if we think they're in a dark forest, there's a scary, spooky sound coming from the bushes, is Dorothy just going to say, oh, what was that? I don't think she is. I think she might be quite scared and might be quite quiet. What was that? Okay. So I might say Dorothy asked timidly, or she could ask quietly, or she could ask slowly, or she could croak, couldn't she? So I could change ask to something else, or she could stutter. What was that? Okay, she could stutter possibly. So I'm going to go with timidly, though. She asked timidly. So timidly means quietly and quite afraid and quite shy almost, okay? I cannot imagine, replied the Scarecrow. But we can go and see, replied the Scarecrow. Could he reply without any fear? Because remember, the Scarecrow didn't have a brain, so he didn't really have many of his emotions, did he? He didn't really quite understand what fear was. So he was like, yeah, let's go and see what it is. Okay. One of the big trees had been chopped partly through. I don't really like the word big. I can up-level the word big. One of the trees, I'm going to add a relative clause, that towered above their heads, had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it was a horse, but no ordinary horse, instead a wooden horse. Okay, so I think that relative clause gives us that extra information that builds the picture in our reader's head a little bit more. Did you just speak? Dorothy asked. Yes, answered the sawhorse. I did, and I've been here for over a year. So I've as a contraction, isn't it? It's a contraction of I have. So I need my apostrophe to show the contraction. I have been here for over a year and no one has ever heard me before or come to help me. We could say then, couldn't we? We could maybe say that the sawhorse answered he'd be happy about it, wouldn't he? So we could try and get something like that in there. Yes, he could possibly cry, cried the sawhorse. So he's not tearfully crying, he's, yes, I did. So he's quite happily crying it, isn't he? Okay, so that is what we are looking for in your writing today. I'm looking to see that your speech punctuation is perfect, that you are using new speak a new line, your vocabulary is nice and high level, and that you are using the narration. So remember, that's adding more bits of the story in between your speech, okay, to keep your reader and your story moving on. Okay, below this on the PDF you have got the editing stations as well to help you. So if you want to work through those just to check everything is as you want it to be, and that will help you a lot. So your task is to edit part 3, and then you need to self-assess your writing once you have finished.